Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. It's episode 2554 of The Tom Woods Show, and I am joined today by Justin Folk, who is the director. You are the director?
That's correct.
Okay,
Director and producer, yes.
Triple checking here of the film Am I Racist? It is, I guess this is the second Matt Walsh film, the first one being What is a Woman? But this one was released in theaters, unlike the first one. And I want to talk about it because I went to see it with one of my adult daughters, who is somewhat apolitical, but she is aware enough to know something's fishy about all this stuff.
Right.
And she came away with a very favorable impression. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And so I directed this movie, Am I Racist? And I worked on What is a Woman with Matt Walsh as well. So this is sort of our follow-up. And interesting that you say that your daughter is not political and that she enjoyed it. That was really a deliberate goal of ours with both these movies, actually, to make two films that were not overtly political, but were much more cultural about these issues we're facing. And so it really is good to hear that a movie like this would resonate with someone like that.
It's pretty ambitious to release a film like this in theaters. How did that idea come up?
Well, it's something that we wanted to do to basically make sure that this message got out there beyond just the conservative bubble. Instead of just speaking to ourselves, we know that there's plenty of people that agree with us, but there's also a lot of people out there that really aren't totally aware of what's going on with this issue. And so we wanted to reach them. And to do that, you have to be in a place where they can see your work. And so instead of just being behind a platform with a subscription, we wanted to be out there in the world and having this movie be seen by just regular everyday people that have busy lives, but nonetheless, this message would be important to them.
Oh, well, I'll tell you something of the way my daughter looked at it. As we were heading to the theater, because going was my idea, I said, "Hey, you want to go see this with me?" And so we went. And as we headed to the theater, I was filling her in on things that she might not have been aware of. Like, for example, you've probably seen some of the crazy headlines alleging that there is a white supremacist origin in the eating of 3 meals a day or in waking up early in the morning.
Right.
And she said to me, "Well, good thing I don't do either one of those." But what she got out of it in large part was that there is like an industry dedicated to agitating racial issues to the point where reconciliation is impossible. That was what she walked away with, and I presume that's kind of what you wanted to say.
That's exactly right. I'm glad she came away with that idea because, and by the way, by not being on time and she's already begun the journey of being anti-racist. No, I say that as a joke, but really some of these ideas are so crazy. These ideas are so crazy, and when you make a movie like this, you get to dive into these. You get to research this stuff, and you get to learn what these people are actually saying, and it's just madness. So. We did want to reveal these bad ideas for exactly what they are. And to your point, they don't go anywhere. They're hopeless. They don't have a way out. It's basically you have a framework where you have oppressors and the oppressed. And there's nothing that either of those groups can do about it. And so the sort of the ethos behind this, the idea that's being pushed forward is tremendously just hopeless and dark. And so we wanted to expose that to the world. We wanted to just show people what these people are really preaching, and that it is an industry. It is the reason it exists doesn't really have much to do with race. It has to do with power, and it has to do with money. And that's why this sort of racism, this idea of systemic racism is constantly being reinvented as something else. They're putting race as a tag on everything. Because if it goes away, they're not making money anymore. And so they have to do that.
And yet you're right. There's something paradoxical about the message here, because on the one hand, it's inevitable you're going to be racist if you're white. That's inevitable. and you can't ever really not be racist, but still, I want you to come attend my $300 seminar anyway. It's very hard for them to explain them. They seem to say, well, you can make progress, but if I can make progress, couldn't I then make more progress and then still more and then eventually not be this way anymore? They can't seem to settle on that. And there is a seminar where I think one of the nice touches of the film is that we see the dollar amount at the top of the screen. I'm trying not to give away too many spoilers, but you see the dollar amount in the corner of the screen as to what the person charges for, whatever that person is doing. In this particular seminar, the person was being paid $30,000 to run it. And it is absolute gibberish nonsense. Nobody but a guilt-ridden left liberal would find any merit in this.
That's correct. Yeah, it was important to show what these people were charging. It actually became part of our story. It was important for people to understand, okay, not only are these the ideas these people are preaching to us, but this is what they're getting paid to do it. We found it actually, just to give you a little inside baseball, we found it actually very difficult to get these people in the room with us unless we paid their fee. But the moment we said we would pay their fee, the doors flew open. And so the process of making this movie is very similar to the story itself. The process of us reaching out to these people. And so that's why we put that on screen for everybody to see. This is what these people charge. And by the way, this is what they asked for. We didn't throw out a crazy number and they accepted it. These are the numbers that they asked for. This is what we paid them. And so the message and the sort of the process of how we did what we did, they tie in together. They're both important because they go into the overall story of this is what they teach and this is why they're teaching it. This is the money they're making.
I don't want to. I'm not going to give away specific things that happen, but I think it's obvious from the press pictures that Matt Walsh is concealing his identity in much of the film. I don't think that would come as a surprise to people. So, were you guys nervous at any time? Like this could turn really ugly if it went wrong?
Oh, sure. We never knew what we were going to get, and we just knew we had to kind of be ready for anything. Matt's disguise, as you mentioned, it's a very poor disguise. It's not a great disguise. It still looks like Matt. It's just a bad wig with a man bun. And that was kind of by design. But yeah, sure. At any point, somebody could be like, "You're Matt Walsh. What are you doing here?" And we would have filmed it, and it probably would have made it into the film. But that was a gamble we were ready to take. And it paid off. It worked because the thing we found was the people that exist in this kind of leftist world of anti-racism, they're so much in a bubble and they only listen to each other that you could get Matt Walsh sitting right in front of them and they don't recognize him because they don't really care about the other side. They don't care about any of ideas outside of their own. And so they may know kind of loosely who Matt Walsh is, but they've never really heard what he has to say or follow any of his work. And so we sort of use that to our benefit to a certain degree, that these people are so much in their own bubble and they only talk to themselves. And it helped us out when we were making the film.
Well, I think it's safe to say that if you ask the average person on the street, are you anti-racist? Almost everybody would say yes. But they don't realize that when the term anti-racist is used in these kinds of contexts, it means something very different from what they think they're committing themselves to when they answer a pollster question on the street. I think they genuinely think it means something like what probably Matt Walsh thinks it means. So then for them, so in other words, I think the movie, of course it's your project, but it seems to me the premise is that there are a lot of people out there in the US who are people of goodwill who would probably think of themselves, if push came to shove, as, quote, anti-racist, but that if they were exposed to what the leaders of the anti-racist industry believed and talked about, they would think it was downright crazy, and they would want to say, well, I'm against racism, but I don't want to have anything to do with that. I assume that's roughly where you guys are?
100%.
Yeah.
So most of the people in this country are polite. They don't want to be racist. They go on and live their lives. And these grifters take advantage of that fact. They definitely take advantage of the people that don't know what the terminology means. And they look at themselves as a kind person. And they take advantage of that fact. And the left uses language to benefit themselves. And in the term anti-racist, yeah, you know, say, I'm anti-racist, whatever that means, but it means something very different from the left. The left is using it in a very different way. It's like, for example, Black Lives Matter, and the way they used that language as a sort of a weapon, where it meant something very different than what the normal meaning is, which is, of course, Black Lives Matter. We all believe that, but for them, it was something very different. It was political, and it had a very different meaning. And this is how the left will use language and change language to their benefit.
What's your professional background other than these films?
I'm a filmmaker. I've been making, directing commercials and movies all of my professional career. And I started out in Hollywood. I started out working on network TV shows and big movies. Did some big films in the past in a role, you know, in visual effects and other things like that. I worked on the Matrix sequels and the Incredible Hulk. And I got to a point in my career where I was kind of tired of being a cog in the wheel of Hollywood, and decided to really, you know, want to make an impact in the war of ideas. And so I jumped ship from Hollywood, which isn't like a stable career choice necessarily, but it's been great because I've been able to now make movies that have a cultural impact of the values that I believe in, values that are very pro-American, pro-liberty ideas. And so it's been a great journey. I've got to work with some great people along the way, and Am I Racist is the latest installment of that.
So how did you latch on with the Daily Wire? Were they doing a search for a director and they found you, or did you find them?
Well, we knew each other going back. I used to live out in Los Angeles, and I got to know a lot of the guys that later went and created the Daily Wire. So I've had a relationship with Jeremy Boring and even Ben Shapiro and some of these others for quite some time. And I came to Nashville and had a meeting with them, and they told me that Matt Walsh wanted to make a movie about transgenderism. And at first, the sound of that was a little, I was kind of like, I don't really know. I mean, the issue for me was a weird issue. I think for a lot of people it is. And I wasn't sure if that's the next movie I wanted to make. But then when Matt explained the process of how he wanted to make the movie, which is simply to go around and ask questions, and this whole gender ideology would just fall apart, I thought to myself, you know what? That could work. That's a great idea. This sort of Socratic method of filmmaking. And so at that point, we pitched the idea for What is a Woman? And then Daily Wire greenlit that project, and we got started. Credit to Daily Wire for greenlighting a project like that. Nobody else would make a movie like that. And so we got started, and we went on a journey to make the film, and got Matt in the room with these so-called experts to ask very, very simple questions. And Matt's theory was correct. They couldn't answer a simple question like, what is a woman? And so in the process, we got to expose this sort of postmodern relativism that they were pushing on the rest of Americans. And we're really proud of that movie. So
I've been meaning to see it. I've always wanted to see it, and I'm sorry to say I've never gotten around to it, but I've been curious about it. Now, did he there's no disguise in that movie. He just goes right in. Do these people know who he is?
They didn't at the time, and Matt was a lot less famous, I guess.
That's
you could
what
say,
I thought.
At that time. What is a Woman definitely put Matt on the big stage in terms of just people being aware of him and his work. Also, going back to the point I made earlier, these people are in their own little bubble, and a guy like Matt Walsh doesn't necessarily pop up on their radar very much. They kind of only talk to themselves. So we had that to our advantage on that film as well. But yeah, Matt wasn't as well known when we made What is a Woman as he is today.
We all know there are a lot of things broken in the United States. A lot. You don't need me to tell you that. And one of the brokenest is American health care and American health insurance. Have you ever said, my favorite part of being an American is my health insurance plan? American health insurance, we all know, is frustrating and expensive. Claims denials are becoming more common. And they had the nerve to pass something called the Affordable Care Act that only made your premiums go up. Well, that's why CrowdHealth was created. It's not health insurance. It's a better way to pay for healthcare through crowdfunding. Because let's face it, your insurance policy is full of unpleasant surprises. Your premiums are going up every year. CrowdHealth does things differently. For $175 for an individual or $575 for a family of 4 or more, you'll get access to a community of people who are willing to help out in the event of an emergency. You'll get access to telemedicine visits, discounted prescriptions, and so much more without doctors' networks getting in the way. Let CrowdHealth help with your healthcare needs. Get started today for just $99 per month for your first 3 months. Go to joincrowdhealth.com/woods. CrowdHealth is not insurance. Learn more at joincrowdhealth.com/woods. That's joincrowdhealth.com/woods. So how do you, as the filmmaker behind both of these, how do you compare them? Are you more satisfied with one than the other? Did you learn from the first one and apply what you learned in the second one?
Yeah, exactly. We did exactly that. We learned a lot of things along the way, and I have a great team. And I just think we got better and better. I think, first of all, I'm very proud of both films. Both films are going to make, I think, a very important cultural impact. What Is Woman did that. Actually, there was laws that were changed in policy in our country in terms of protecting minors from these harmful gender mutilation surgeries and hormone therapies. And so it's made a tremendous impact. I'm hoping for the same type of cultural impact with Am I Racist, that we would look at DEI very differently as a society, sort of for the poison that it is. But we didn't want, with Am I Racist, we didn't want to just do a sequel. We wanted to make a different type of movie. We wanted to use humor more. And so when we set out to make Am I Racist, we didn't want to just make What Is a Woman Part 2. And so we had to really think hard about what we were going to do. And we definitely decided that let's make a comedy. Let's make a comedy about this stuff. Even though it's a very serious topic, we thought humor would be an effective tool to expose these grifters for what they do. And I'm just thrilled that it's been received so well and that people actually do think it's funny. Comedy is not easy to do, but thankfully with Matt, he's just a tremendous talent and able to pull off these circumstances and scenarios, make them incredibly awkward, incredibly funny. And so I credit him for actually being able for us to make this funny movie.
Well, I think of myself as, relatively cool as a cucumber, but I was looking at Matt Walsh through this thing, trying to imagine myself in his shoes. And I don't think I could have pulled that off because he absolutely looked completely at ease. He did not look nervous or concerned at all. He looked completely at ease, which is how he was able to pull this off. If he had looked nervous, something would have been fishy. But his own performance was highly meritorious, let's say, and it's good, very, very good for the film that he has that. He's not just a writer, he's not just a podcaster, but he's flexible enough that he can put himself into the most bizarre situations and completely dominate them effortlessly.
He's a rare talent. Absolutely. There's very few people that could kind of do what he does for a day job in terms of the political commentary and the insights he has, and sort of having a daily podcast show talking about these ideas, and then turn around and perform like as an actor, essentially, and being dropped into these real life situations and play a role the way he did. It is a rare talent, and I can't think of anybody. Let's just say if somebody on the other side wanted to try to attempt this, somebody like who knows, like a Rachel Maddow or something that does a daily show and then to be dropped into a film where they have to play a character. I can't think of anybody else that could do this the way Matt does it. And you're right. It's this ability to sort of internalize this stuff and not show anything, like a poker player is Matt's special skill. And, the people that are sitting on the other side of the room from him can't read him. And it allows him to sort of steer the conversation and go where he wants with the whatever scene that we're in. But like I said, it's a rare talent, and I think we're all just privileged to work with him.
I'm going to ask you something that if you feel like it's given away too much, I'll omit it. But for my personal curiosity, I hope you'll answer all the same. And that is
Sure.
Wilfred Riley, who's a professor who's, among other things, written the book Hate Crime Hoax, makes an appearance in the film. And the Matt Walsh persona character in this film seems to be surprised that he's the author of a book called Hate Crime Hoax. because he wants to talk about hate crimes, and Riley is shooting down everything he's saying. But Riley seems kind of befuddled by the questions he's getting. So my question to you is, did he know it was you guys or not?
Yeah, not to give away too much inside baseball, I can say that Riley is aware of Matt Walsh's work, and he was familiar with What Is a Woman. We tried to tell him very little, and I think with Wilfred Riley, I just said, hey, listen, just take everything seriously, because he knew who Matt Walsh was, and so
he was so good. Wilfred Riley is so good in this movie.
I agree,
Yeah.
and we needed someone to bring some common sense to our film. And so we needed somebody that could represent the ideas and shoot down really these bad ideas. So the ideas that Matt was representing in the film that he had learned along the way from all these anti-racist grifters, he just had to present those to Wilfred Riley, and we allowed Wilfred Riley to basically shoot them down. But I just asked Wilfred to treat the interview like any other normal interview. And he did an excellent job at that.
Yeah, he was terrific. So I followed the travails of the film, let's say the first week or two. Like I was reading what Matt Walsh was saying about it, about how it was doing and this and that, you know, and comparing it to other documentaries that had been released in theaters. But I remember early on, one of the things was that it hadn't gotten a review from a major critic yet. So now it's many weeks since that time. And what has the critical response been like?
Well, it's been interesting, for sure. We still don't have reviews from major critics. So if you're talking about publications like the New York Times or some of these other major mainstream media outlets that would normally do a film review on a film, especially one that opened in the top 5 of the box office, they don't really have an excuse not to review the film. They review all kinds of films, and especially the ones that are that do well in the box office. So we still don't have critical reviews from like the big media outlets. We have some critical reviews from some of the YouTubers and some of the mid-tier critics that are out there, thankfully. So we do have some reviews, but I think the mainstream outlets have been afraid to review this film because I think they know they're going to have to say something nice about it. And instead of getting reviews, we get these editorials and think pieces that have been published. We have one was recently published a couple days ago in the New Yorker, where it's a very lengthy piece, actually, where it talks about the film, but it's not a film review per se. It's more of an editorial on us and our movie and our process. Same thing with a couple other outlets. It doesn't come from their film critic. It comes from a editorial writer. So it's been interesting that the way that the leftist mainstream outlets have mostly ignored this film. And because if the film was bad, I think they'd review it in a heartbeat. If the film was something that they could rip to pieces, we'd have all kinds of reviews, but that just hasn't been the case.
Well, but see, another thing that a review would have to do is it would have to summarize for the reader the anti-racist worldview. And I think the anti-racist, quote unquote, worldview repels normal people.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true. Yeah. And in some ways, even in these editorial pieces that have come out, they've kind of thrown these people under the bus and pretended that the Robin DiAngelo, who's featured in our movie, and Sarah Rao, the people from Race to Dinner that are featured in our movie, they've been trying to explain them as just fringe elements of the anti-racist movement, which is totally untrue. These are the thought leaders of that movement. And these are the people that the left have adopted as the sort of the grand marshals of the anti-racist parade. But now they're pretending that these people are sort of fringe and we're going after the fringe element here, which is entirely untrue. And so it's interesting that they're making that pivot and tossing those people under the bus.
Back in, well, I guess it was 20 years ago, 2004, I had a book that did very well, New York Times bestseller. New York Times hated it, The Politically Incorrect Guide to American History. New York Times hated it. So they wrote a very negative review, but it was a signed editorial on the editorial page, like, this book is dangerous. You cannot Do not. And then the next week was the biggest selling week we ever had.
Yeah.
So 4 years later, I had my second New York Times bestseller, Meltdown, about the financial crisis. And in that case, if you go online to look at the bestseller list, you can click the title to go to the New York Times review. Mine was the only one in the top 15 that was not clickable. I mean, like, this is not normal. That's not a coincidence. You know, that's not a coincidence. Can you tell people who Robin DiAngelo is?
Happy to. Robin DiAngelo is a author and an academic. She came out with a book called White Fragility back in 2019. Her timing was good because it came out before the George Floyd incident, and her book became sort of like what some people referred to as the Bible of the anti-racist movement. We actually have a quote in our movie that Eric Michael Dyson, who's a big leftist and sort of kind of a race hustler, said that she's the sheriff of the anti-racist movement. So she's the described sheriff of this movement. So her book, White Fragility, became a New York Times bestseller for several years in a row. And it actually became required reading in a lot of academia and in corporations. People were being forced to read this book. And essentially the premise of the book is if you're white, you're inherently racist. And if you deny that, if you say, no, I'm not racist, well, that's proof somehow that you actually are racist. That
sounds like something a racist might say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you have what they call white fragility if you can't admit your own racism. And so it's total garbage pseudo-intellectualism. And if you read the book, it's even poorly written, like her grammar's bad. But yet this was the thing that the left used to sort of promote their ideas to the main stage, to all of Americans. And this is the stuff that's been pushed on us for the last 4 years or so. And so it was tremendous satisfaction to be able to get her into our movie and to show her ideas for what they are and really kind of draw her ideas to their logical conclusions. And if you watch our movie, Matt hosts his own workshop at the end of the movie where he takes some of these ideas. He takes some of these ideas that he heard from people like Robin DiAngelo, and we take these ideas to the logical conclusions to show what happens if we take ideas of people like Robin DiAngelo seriously. And it ends in a mess, obviously. It's divisive. It's total chaos, and it ends in a total mess. It doesn't end well. And so Robin DiAngelo, like I said, I described her as the sort of the grand marshal of the anti-racist movement parade. And so it was really wonderful to have her film. And actually, one of the things I'm most proud of, if you go to Robin DiAngelo's Wikipedia site today, and you look up her list of her body of work, if you scroll to the bottom there, it says that she is starring in Am I Racist, which was released in theater 2024.
Oh, that is great. That is great. Well, sometimes Wikipedia is frustrating, and other times it can be deeply satisfying. Now,
that's right.
At some point in the film, either she points it out or somehow we learn that she has, in addition to writing that book, been a consultant with, or maybe held workshops at Amazon. I think it was Amazon, Google, Netflix, big companies, whatever they were, big companies. And I just couldn't help thinking, if she wanted $15,000 to sit down to talk to you guys for your film, could you imagine what a day with Robin DiAngelo at Amazon would have cost them? I can't imagine.
Yeah, they'd be paying the corporate rate, which I'm sure is much higher than what we paid. We just paid her regular kind of sort of run-of-the-mill speaker fee, $15,000. But she's doing a day-long workshop for Coca-Cola, which she did do, or a workshop for Google or Netflix or Snapchat. These are all companies that she named that she's consulted for. I cannot imagine the windfall of money that this woman has taken in simply to show up and tell a bunch of white people that they're racist and a bunch of black people that they're victims. It's good money, and there's a reason this grift exists. And I would love to see the books of Robin DiAngelo to see what kind of money she's taken in from these corporate entities.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, what a bunch of suckers I mean, they deserve having to pay the bill for Robin DiAngelo if they're dumb enough to think this is going to benefit them. I mean, they deserve whatever the heck she charged them.
Yeah. And I'm not going to defend these companies, but I will say that every single, first of all, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, this DEI thing. Every Fortune 500 company had a DEI initiative. So it almost was a cost of doing business in society today, where they all just had to kind of pay it. So I'm not even sure that they believed all this stuff, but they knew they had to hire somebody like Robin DiAngelo to come in and basically berate all their employees. It was the way things have gone in this country for the last 4 years. Now, hopefully we're getting away from that. I've heard recently there's a number of these big companies that have dropped their DEI initiatives because, the grift is up. But for a while there, it was just simply a cost of doing business for these companies. And whether or not they believed it to be effective, they did it out of necessity. They did it so they wouldn't get the political pressure. They did it so they wouldn't be attacked by these leftist organizations like Human Rights Campaign and all these different organizations that would come after you if you weren't doing these things. It's the same thing as posting the black square, on your social media. You had to do that. It was like compelled speech in some ways. You had to virtue signal and say, oh, no, we're on the right side of this. So we're going to hire these leftists that are pushing these completely political ideas and get behind them. But I have hope, though. Things are changing a bit, and some of these companies are getting away from that.
Folks, I can speak only for myself, but I can say as I get older, I find myself getting more and more impatient with things that waste my time. And even though I love books, I'm afraid that includes books. I want my books to just tell me what they need to tell me. No fluff. Get to the point. And that's what the Blinkist app does for thousands of nonfiction books in 27 different categories. No fluff, just the heart of the matter. You can absorb the Blinkist summary in just 15 minutes of reading or listening. I mean, what a time to be alive, right? Among the thousands and thousands of titles at Blinkist, you'll find libertarian classics, Rothbard, Friedman, even a book by Ol Woods, your very own host here. So if you've got a half-hour commute each way, you can be reading and absorbing the key points in 4 books every single day. Think that might make you a more informed and interesting person? Well, right now, Blinkist has a special offer just for our audience. Go to Blinkist.com/Woods to start your 7-day free trial and get 40% off a Blinkist premium membership. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist, Blinkist.com/Woods to get 40% off and a 7-day free trial. Blinkist.com/Woods. And now for a limited time, you can even use Blinkist Connect to share your premium account. You'll get 2 premium subscriptions for the price of 1. Yeah, and I think there's been some good work exposing what's going on at some companies, and that's embarrassed those companies, particularly when those companies have demographics that are not being benefited by these. Well, really nobody's being benefited by these programs ultimately. But, I will say about Robin DiAngelo in the film, obviously I'm not going to reveal what happens, but I will say that I think I can say this. The theater in which I saw the film, that was the moment that got the loudest laugh. But it was a laugh of shock and surprise and humor. I mean, people couldn't believe what they were seeing at one particular moment. And it was just everyone, my daughter, everyone. Oh my gosh. Boy, did they get her.
Yeah, that's consistently been the reaction. And that's what we were going for. So I'm glad I landed. But every theater that I've been in, that is the reaction. Jaws hit the floor. People gasp. People are just completely shocked. They laugh. They roar with laughter. I've even seen people kind of lean and almost fall out of their chair. But the amazing thing about that is that moment is just we basically Robin DiAngelo gets painted into her ideological corner, and she has no choice in the matter. And I know you don't want to give away spoilers, but the movie's been out for a few weeks now. We can kind of talk about it, but she does pay reparations to our black producer, and it's roariously funny. But it actually does have a very important message tucked into all of that.
Oh, no doubt about it. And by the way, whoever came up with the idea, you must have been laughing as it was suggested, for deducting from her $15,000 the tiny amount she paid in reparations. That was just brilliant. We all loved that. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, there was actually the idea came from one of the guys that works at the Daily Wire, and we were showing the film, and he's like, you know what you guys need to do here? You need to put that counter back up there, just deduct the money. And we're like, you know what? That's brilliant, my man.
It was.
That's exactly.
It was.
Yeah.
I actually turned to my daughter. I said, whoever had that idea deserves a raise. Like that was really great.
It certainly does.
So,
yes.
So people watch the film, they leave. What do you want them to think or maybe even do next?
Well, I think the case for this movie is the same as What is a Woman? We just hope that this movie gives people courage to speak out against this stuff. You know, for a long time, you would be called a bigot if you didn't support these sort of initiatives. I know a lot of people go to their workplace and they have to sit through these workshops. They have to deal with this on a daily basis. I feel bad for those people. Some people have even been fired because they haven't gone along with these DEI initiatives. So in one case, we want to give people courage. In another case, we really want to poison the well. We really want to, these are bad ideas, and our goal was to expose them. And so we really hope that these ideas have been tainted in a lot of people's viewpoints and poisoned to a certain degree so that we don't return to them. And these people that are making all this money stop making the money off of dividing us based on our skin color. And so, yeah, our goal is multifaceted, but we want to help people, give them courage. And we also want to really do some damage to this really, really bad industry that's been dividing our country.
Could you see yourself doing another theater release like this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're not easy. It's not easy to convince the exhibitors, the theater owners to, and by the way, they're not Marxists like the Hollywood studios. The theaters want to make money. And if you can prove to them that you have a product that will sell tickets, they're happy to have you. So as long as we can keep creating content that will resonate and people will show up and buy tickets. And that's why it's so important to support movies like this as an audience member and just simply buy a ticket, because you're sending a signal to not just the theaters, but to Hollywood and the entire entertainment industry that this is the type of content that we need. This is the type of content that we want. And so buying a ticket really does matter. And so as long as we're in a marketplace, and as long as we succeed, there's going to be more opportunities for films like this to get into theaters and to get places where people wouldn't normally see them. And I'm not just talking about conservatives. I'm talking about independents. I'm talking about liberals. There happens to be a lot of liberals that actually like our movie and that are tired of this nonsense, and they've told us that. And so, but it's important that we have our movie in places that these people can see them, and not just behind, not just in conservative bubbles where they can't be seen.
Right, and so I would be urging people, who, let's say, consume the Daily Wire's content, and of course not just Daily Wire, but those people are going to be plugged in the most as to, what's going on with the film. And I would say, try to bring a friend with you. I mean, not a friend who's going to disown you. I mean, you can probably tell the difference, but bring a friend who, maybe has never thought about this much, or a friend who is open to persuasion. And this can be an opportunity to have a conversation. So and that doubles the number of people who come. If you bring a friend, right. And remember that you may, and a lot of people I'm sure who subscribe over the Daily Wire, they want the film to succeed, almost like it's their own film. And so I would be appealing to them, bring your friends, because we know it's going to entertain you, but we want it to inform everybody else. What I often say is, because a lot of times people will say, I have this crazy liberal friend, and if only I get my liberal friend to read this book, I think that would help. Yeah. But they'll never read the book. So my answer to them is, say, if you read this book for me, I'll read whatever book you recommend to me for you, and then we'll talk about it. And that seems fair. So maybe you take them to Am I Racist, and maybe you have to sit through something, but a good conversation may ensue.
Well, I'd say the commitment level is a lot lower than going to see a funny movie, right? Rather than reading an entire book, right? And that's what we try to create. We wanted to make people laugh. We want to entertain them, and humor is a powerful tool because it opens people up to ideas. And so even though our movie isn't the one fix all for all of society on this issue, at least it'll open people up to the ideas and get those conversations going that you mentioned. And I think we're going to find a lot of common ground. I think we're going to find that we all mostly agree on this. If you're a rational, sane person, you're going to look at our film and say, you know what? Yeah, they're onto something here. Even if you're a so-called self-described liberal, because actually what we've done with this movie is not political. It is really foundational to the ideas of Martin Luther King Jr. that we should be treating people based on character and not skin color, and that we live in a meritocracy and we should treat people based on what they do rather than what their skin color is. So those are the foundational ideas, and I think most people agree on that. And that's why this is a good movie to sort of kind of kick that door open a little bit.
Well, what people should do is just go look up Am I Racist at the theater and go see it. But do you also have a website for the film?
Absolutely. amiracist.com is where you go. It has all the different theater information there. You can find one near you. We're still in quite a few theaters this upcoming weekend. I would do it soon because we're not always going to be in the theater. And so it's important to get out there and support it while it's still in the theater. And by the way, it's a much, you experienced it, but it's a much different environment when you're watching in a movie theater with other people and you're laughing together. It is a communal event. Laughter is contagious. I highly recommend it. If you're up for a good laugh, make sure to see Am I Racist in the theaters. Go to amiracist.com. So.
Well, Justin, thanks so much for your time. I really enjoyed having this conversation with the director himself, given how much I enjoyed the film. So best of luck to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for watching the film and talking about it. It's always rewarding to go talk about the film that you just made and with people that have seen it and enjoyed it. So thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Well, the pleasure was mine. Thank you, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.